Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about fish. Yes, that's right, I'm still doing this thing again, more pre-modern stuff, more decks with fishes and stuff, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I got some fishes, and I got some coffee, and so pretty much yeah, let's freaking do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here I go again, back on my shit. Another aggro control thing. Still trying to make it work. Kind of hard without force of will, but that's okay. No biggie. We're gonna keep doing it anyways. This is an old vintage deck back in the day, based off, well, standstill and manlands and crap and little dorks or whatever. Um, yeah, so pretty sweet, pretty sweet. Um, of course, we won't be splashing any colors today. It's too hard, basically, to do that and try and support days and stuff. So, it is what it is, but that's okay, no biggie. The name's a little wonky too, because it's like back in the day there wasn't really like a Merfolk deck. So like a deck with Lord of Atlantis and then other Merfolk. It's called Fish, even though it's not full of fish. But yeah, so and then well, yeah, it's kind of a wonky name, a little confusing, but basically this is just a fish is mostly descriptive of decks with small dorks with disruptive abilities that beat down and da 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 da. Primarily blue decks, I should say, and vintage currently they're like bug colored, so they can play stuff like Deathrise Shaman and all sorts of other disruptive dudes. So that's pretty cool, at least in vintage, anyways. Um, Fish hasn't really been an archetype in Legacy for a while, but that's okay. So let's talk about this one in Premodern, and let's get on to the list. All right, got this nice 20-20-20 split. Um, 20 dorks, 20 dudes, 20 lands, pretty much where you want to be. Uh, Foil, I like foil. It's nice, kind of a free counter, and it has pretty good synergy with days because you can use the island that you return to pay for the alternate cost for foil. Um, yeah, pretty sweet there. I'm not sure the right number of foils or counter spells, but I think you want some number of counter spells, some number of foils. Mm-hmm. Legacy's Allure, we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's pretty good. Basically, your only kind of removal. And then we have stuff like Curiosity. Again, if you've been playing Standard recently, most of you guys know how these sort of things work. Curiosity is obviously like Curious Obsession, which is the card. Was it? I think Rivals of Ixalan. Gave it like +1/+1, and then whenever it deals damage to a player, you draw a card. Curiosity is sort of like that, except it doesn't have like the drawback or whatever. Um, and then of course Standstill. So this has all the Standstill stuff: Cloud of Faeries, Wastelands, Factories, all this other crap. And then like a small little Merfolk stuff thing going on, and Spiketail Hatchling, of course, too. Sideboard, I mean, it's up in the air, but you definitely want like at least 5 to 6, probably about 5 to 6 cards against red decks. Just because I imagine they'd be pretty popular because they're so good and they're really hard to deal with. Because even stuff like Sea Sprite can either get maybe blasted on the way down or curse scrolled or whatever. So even that's not always the best. It's not going to win you the game by itself. But Sea Sprite plus Hydroblast or Chills or something is pretty good. Um, and then stuff like Crypt, I'm pretty much always going to want some number of Crypts and then some amount of cards to hate on combo. Null Rod, which is good against combo, and then also Tinker and Wildfire decks and all those things, Ancient Tomb decks, Stifle against all sorts of different things, Seal of Removal against Oath, and also good against Reanimator as well. You also could play more Waterfront Bouncers too. Maybe another Waterfront Bouncer would be pretty sweet. That's good stuff. Yeah, but this is pretty much the list, and I wouldn't imagine it would. You can fudge the numbers and stuff a little bit, change some things, but at least the main deck I think is pretty solid. All right, so there's some cards you probably noticed that you probably weren't sure what the heck is going on. First up, we got Legacy's Allure. So this has always been kind of a staple in Fish. I always liked it because dropping this thing, like countering their first play, dazing it or something, and then dropping Legacy's Allure and then getting it up to like three, four counters or something. You can just take anything. I mean, usually only one or two on it, so it's pretty sweet. It's definitely a really powerful effect. It's a little slow, but I'm a big fan. Also, it just has silly art. Pretty sweet though. About your only option for removal if you don't want to play something like Keg. Then we got Root Water Thief, and this is actually I can't remember. Was this wasn't the quote unquote first one because that was Avalanche Rider was the first one I believe. Um, or maybe I'm thinking of Sylvan Safekeeper. Anyways, this was an invitational card. The guy, I think it was some Scandinavian dude or whatever that won the invitational. He would be the dude in the boat. The the Rootwater Thief itself is of course the merfolk in the background. Is going for his balls or something. Anyways, this card's really sweet because I mean you get to steal stuff out of your opponent's deck, exile it, which is great. This is pretty strong against some control decks. Uh, or obviously certain combo decks, or if there's a couple cards that you can't beat at all, it's definitely pretty sweet there. Against a lot of decks that are like super redundant, it's not particularly good, the exile effect. But again, yeah, it gets pumped by Lord of Atlantis, and of course you can give it flying too, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, this guy's awesome. It's a pretty fun card to play with. Plus, I mean, then you have like the knowledge of what's in your opponent's deck, and then even and if you're like a super genius, you'd be like, oh man, I can figure out what you have in your hand too. Pretty awesome, right? So that's pretty cool. So it's kind of like Peak. You get like a lot of information. So it's a good card. I like it a lot. Um, and then Spiketail Hatchling. This card again, just a flying for Spike. It's sweet. It's got flying. Can't go wrong there, right? So good stuff. Okay, so there's all sorts of different things. I kind of want to maybe experiment with, maybe go with like maybe more of a skies approach, maybe like shot an airship or something, or add more, maybe add more mana denial stuff like Winter Orb or Rising Waters or something. That would be pretty sweet. But yeah, hard. I mean, hard to say. This is just sort of like going with what I know. Um, and then of course the sideboard, like as always, is always. I mean, there's a million different the nice thing about this format, there's like a billion different good sideboard cards to hate on pretty much anything. All sorts of things that are totally maybe out of like what the color pie nowadays would allow. Like blue blasts and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, you can do all sorts of sweet stuff. The nice thing, this deck tends to beat up on um, like combo and control decks and stuff, uh, which is pretty sweet. Um, you can have issues with like faster aggressive decks and stuff. Obviously, something like Sly is really tough. You have to board pretty heavily to beat that deck. Um, yeah, they can have all sorts of nasty cards for you after board two, and you're obviously a lot slower. And trying to put standstill, or excuse me, not standstill, but trying to put a curiosity on something is usually not a good plan, unless it's like a sea sprite or whatever. So yeah, or just any like heavy board control like decks that just spam removal, like super heavy removal, that can be tough too. But yeah, so watch out for that stuff. That's where I was thinking like against mid range E, more mana heavy decks, stuff like Rising Waters or Winter Warp would be pretty sweet. But that's always something at least you could sideboard. Whether you want to do it main deck, I guess that's something to figure out later. Um, yeah, yeah. But also Dan Dan. I just totally remembered this card for some reason. This card's actually in the format because it's like in Chronicles and fifth edition, I believe. It was reprinted in the Time Spiral, the time shifted cards or whatever. So you can get foil Dan Dans for your deck, which is, I mean, obviously amazing. So you can put Dan Dans in your deck, and this thing is a fish. It's a literal fish. This thing is pretty sweet. Like, it kind of makes me like want to just sideboard it in against blue decks because this thing is awesome. I mean, 2 mana 4/1, like that's a pretty good clock. And the only thing is, they just have to be playing blue. Um, so that's pretty hilarious. I really like, I like the idea of playing Dan Dan. This card is such a meme card when I first started because I mean, I don't remember anything about the Dan Dan, but I'm only like halfway through reading like 1001 Arabian Nights. So, but I mean, it's so hard. Like, there's a million different stories, and the stories go into other stories, and oh, it's all over the place. Anyways, I don't know whether that has anything to do with Arabian Nights or not, or if it's just a silly card that they made. But, but I like it. I think it actually might be a worthwhile card to play. So it's something to keep in mind. Uh, yeah, yeah. So, Dan Dan. So that's it. That's it, guys. Just thinking about all these silly aqua water memes. Maybe I should have put aqua on here actually. Yeah, get some more animu stuff. Anyways, this is totally gone off the rails. This is totally way too autistic. So my bad. Can't help it. That's all I know how to do. So I hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for stopping by and have a nice day.